And now we're going to go ahead and get into our Travis Scott Astroworld update. Travis Scott's latest Nike shoe launch postponed out of respect after the Astroworld tragedy. The postponement comes after a 10th victim, 9-year-old Ezra Blount, was pronounced dead Sunday after attending Astroworld. Following 10 deaths and more than 300 injuries at Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival in Houston on November 5th due to a fatal crowd surge, the release of the rapper's latest Nike collaboration has been delayed. On Monday, November 15th, Nike Sneakers app issued a statement saying, out of respect for everyone impacted by the tragic events at the Astroworld Festival, we are postponing the launch of Air Max 1 Cactus Jacks collab. Though the original release date for the footwear collection is unclear, the shoes were due out by early 2022. So they're making quite a pause. So it's not just like a couple weeks. They're saying, they were already due out next year. So if they're postponing stuff that was coming out next year, they're going to take some time.
I think they were first starting to work with Travis Scott back in 2017, and they've done a few different launches. And you know, I think at this point it's more of, do they want to seem tone deaf, right? So let's say they do this launch at the beginning of 2022, or even shortly thereafter. Where are things going to be? Because this thing just keeps getting worse. More cases are filed, more stories are coming out of just, we're going to talk about that today, even giving like a perspective of the emergency responders and hearing an official statement coming from the CEO. So, I think if nothing else, I think that it was probably the right move to push this back because, Travis Scott is kind of becoming cancerous, I think, for big corporations. And, we've talked about, we've heard some shows that he's not going to perform at, and he's just kind of locked up right now in his house, or that's what we're being told, because he's very devastated over what happened. But now we're looking at the fallout, not just as it relates to him as a live performer, but him as a brand ambassador, and whether these brands want to be connected with him. So, I mean, do you think that this is not just where we are being respectful, but more of just a smart PR move of we don't want to be associated with something that is kind of cancerous?
I think it's definitely both. I mean, there was a Travis Scott day that the Houston Rockets postponed, that they were going to celebrate Travis Scott in Houston, but that obviously got postponed. He's supposed to be headlining Coachella next year, which is going to be, interesting to see if he is still the headliner for Coachella next year. And then, he has this Dior collaboration that's also supposed to be happening. So we'll see what happens with that as well. There's been speculation that the Dior collab that he has going on will be pushed back as well. But that stuff has already been made. So it'd be more of Dior just kind of eating the stock and the money that they've already spent in it, just to maybe distance themselves a little bit from Travis Scott. I didn't necessarily think that he was going to get canceled as far as his fans are necessarily concerned. I mean, I think that we are seeing a response, and I feel like he has disappointed a lot of fans just as more footage comes out, as we see more responses to things, as we hear about the after party at David Buster's where he claims that he did not know anything that was going on that night. A lot of people, I think, were turned off.
Well, you want to talk about, fans. All right, let's talk about Ezra Blount, right? So this 9-year-old who was in a medically induced coma because he was having brain, liver, and kidney trauma issues, and he passed. So, this little boy who was a fan of Travis Scott is no longer with us, and now the death toll is up to 10.
10.
On Sunday. And then we heard, the mayor of Houston, he gave his condolences. And then we heard even LiveNation gave their sympathy, shared their sympathies. They are obviously a defendant in all of these different lawsuits that are being filed. I think there was now 79 cases that have been filed in Houston court, and there are more coming. We said this on the last story or video that we posted about this. Just in one of those lawsuits, there were 99 plaintiffs. So there's hundreds of people who are filing these lawsuits or associated with these lawsuits. And so we heard from the mayor, we heard from LiveNation, and then of right now, we haven't heard anything from Travis Scott's camp, other than, now he has an official spokesperson, right? So this is former Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, I should say. And she's the official spokesperson. And I'm just going to quote what she had said. She goes, "This notion that Travis has the ability to stop the concert is ludicrous. They have a 59-page operations plan, and it clearly says the only two people that have the authority to stop the concert were the executive producer and the concert producer. He was not responsible for this, but he wants to be responsible for the solution. So I'm here to make sure we can connect the dots." Are you kidding me?
Wow.
You're telling me that these top artists who, will be late to their own concerts, they'll cancel things like right before because they don't feel like performing. You're telling me that Travis Scott couldn't say, "Hey guys, we're going to stop for 10 minutes to get a breath," versus, not necessarily canceling the show. But you're telling me that because some policy is in place, he knew that and he just couldn't possibly stop the show?
Well, we just saw also, SZA had a concert where she had a fan that passed out, and she stopped the show and made sure that that fan was, okay, and she addressed the concert situation. So, you can do it. It can be done. That statement is just, that didn't help anything. That didn't help put a better taste in people's mouth. For sure. And I'm glad you answered that, because that was my question. Is like, I couldn't find a response or something about Ezra from Travis Scott or from Drake. Now, I don't know how much people are looking for a Drake response, but I'm looking for anything, and I haven't. And I don't know if that is because their lawyers are just like, hey, let's just don't say anything right now, because maybe an acknowledgement of the kid's death, if the way he handles it, if he words it wrong, could play against him wrong. I don't know, but it's kind of weird. It's just some of the stuff, the distance from some of these things. And, we've seen Travis Scott upset. Drake apparently was upset, even though, the next day he threw allegedly threw a $1 million party at a strip club.
Yeah, and I think the venue removed the post, but you can still find it now. It's everywhere, but basically at the strip club, I mean, the money, it was just the floor is completely covered in money, and then there's some videos posted by the different staff that were there, and just, "Thank you, Drake. We had such a great time." So, again, it's this whole, are you tone deaf? Like,
there's the footage.
What did you think?
Drake.
What were you thinking, and what did you think the perception of this was going to be? I mean, again, I'm not going to speak for Drake. I don't represent him. I don't know him. But nonetheless, just as someone at your celebrity level and stature and knowing what's happened,
eyes are on you.
Eyes
are on you. Like, if for nothing else, you know what I mean? But it just these kind of actions, and just seeing what happened afterwards, for just them that night to just be partying afterwards, when you saw the footage of Travis Scott making eye to eye contact with these people that were these victims that were finding, that were pulled out, and just, I don't know, but maybe he's immune to it because we see this activity at his other shows and other things like that. So maybe he's just immune.
I mean, look, there's definitely an argument. We were a little softer with this when we did the first video, but just saying, look, maybe someone passed out, right? So maybe things aren't really that severe. How could, Travis Scott possibly know? But now we're seeing video of fans literally screaming at the top of their lungs, "Stop the show, stop the show." And I mean, people were literally not only laying on the ground. We're seeing ambulances come
Alerts
into
were coming
the
out.
audience.
Alerts were coming out on everywhere. I was getting blown up at like 2:00 in the morning after the show had happened. So he's at a party. There's no way nobody in that whole building of Dave and Buster's party that they threw was not getting updates as, "Oh my God, did you see this? Oh my God, did you see this? Like, there's no way. I was getting updates about it. Everybody was. It was breaking."
Well, and let's go backwards in the timeline a little bit, right? So we said we were going to talk about medical staff at Astroworld, right? So they were responding concurrently to 11 different people who had gone into a cardiac arrest. And so the CEO of Paradox, which is the medic company hired by Astroworld, spoke on camera, and this was on Monday, I believe, to set the record straight on what his team did to defend on what was happening. He goes, "We had 70 people who were working." And actually, the policy, if you want to talk about policies that you need to adhere to, the policy was that if there's a dangerous situation in an audience, you don't want to send medical workers into that audience to then get crushed themselves. But
and we saw that with the when the ambulance was going through, and kids were jumping on top of it, shaking the ambulance as it was trying to help people, and they were disrupting that and jumping off of it.
Right. So the CEO then told reporters that it was basically like this impossible feat, and they were going back into the audience to try to retrieve people, and they were just kind of describing this was one of the most and quote, "This is something I'll have nightmares about for the rest of my life," because the team were kind of applying CPR, and there were bodies all around that they were trying to attend to. So it's again, it's difficult going back to the first video that we put up regarding this event, that Travis Scott had inners in, that his team on stage, front of house, the team that was in the audience, back of house, however you want to relate it, people were seeing things, and at no point did anyone think that you needed to stop the concert. And so, it was interesting to get the medical company's perspective on this.
Two major stops where he was acknowledging what was going on, was looking eye contact directly was going on, and he did not make any other real assistance other than the second time when he was staring at the passed out unconscious person getting pulled out of the crowd. So,
well, and I think,
and I don't think anybody's trying to blame the medical workers at all. If anything, they were understaffed. They were understaffed for that kind of a crowd, and that goes. I would assume that all goes back to the festival organizers once again for not having enough medical personnel in order to treat the people that were, because they were up against incredible, an incredible hill to climb in order to help all the people that they needed to help. The crowd wasn't working with them. The artist wasn't working with them. The people had, everybody had radios and knew what was going on. We've seen the kids yelling at the sound guys and yelling at the camera guys and just saying, doing anything that you can that have radios to stop the show. People are, passing out, getting crushed, and it's terrifying.
Well,
this is not going to be something that's going to be forgot.
The CEO actually commented on what you had just said, right? So he said in regards to were they understaffed, because everyone's getting blamed, all right, them included. And so he goes, the average ratio for these types of events is one medical person per 1,000 people. And he goes, in anticipation of a 50,000 person concert, we actually had 70,000 worth of staff. So in that case, I guess that would have been 70 people, right? So we had 70 people. So we were actually over prepared, but they weren't prepared for this kind of event. They were prepared for like a normal festival where there are normal controls in place. So this goes back to, we're talking about negligence, right? So when we covered that complaint that was filed, the first complaint that was filed, the claim is for negligence against all the companies that were involved in this event, including Travis Scott. So Mr. Pollack, in his statement, he had said, days earlier, Houston officials said firefighters were not in contact with Paradox staff, right? So the medical staff. When firefighters did ask for radio communications, they were instead given cell phone numbers. So as far as even just enabling communication between the different staff members and departments who are overseeing different things, so that when, for example, they're handling 11 cardiac arrest patients at a concurrent moment, that they can at least let the Houston police know and let the front of house know. And they're saying that wasn't even possible. We were given cell phone numbers.
I'll tell you what, when all this stuff keeps coming out, the more information, it's though I doubt criminal charges will go against Travis Scott, the more that I'm seeing that he is maybe not responsible. I can't say the word responsible, but he was the only one that could have done anything to give these kids some air, to try to give some respect to the medical staff, to make people aware. He knew what was going on. I don't believe for a second he did not know what's going on, at least to a degree where he looked out and he could have, at least when he saw the ambulance, he could have made sure that everybody stopped and let the ambulance clear, or the ambulance car clear. That is something that I mean, Jesus, but yeah.
I mean, we can get into the criminal aspect of this, because we've heard some commentators weighing in on this, but I will say this, right? So in the instance, we go back to in the moment when the surges of the crowd are going and people are getting crushed, we go back to what happened with Ezra, right? So the 9-year-old boy, and we heard from his father that Ezra was on his shoulders, and as the crowd was surging, he goes, we were literally in the back of the whole thing. We were in the very back because we wanted to avoid the big crowd, but he goes, we were forced into it because of the surging audience. And he goes, what happened is that they were crushing me so severely, I passed out. When he woke up, Ezra was gone. And so he filed.
No, couldn't even imagine report. That. Imagine that. Imagine you pass out, you had your son on your shoulders, you wake up in a crowd of 70,000 people and have no idea where your child is.
Yeah, well, 50,000, but it probably was a little more than that. Yeah, and I mean that's obviously, incredibly terrifying, and then here we are today, Ezra unfortunately passed. So going back to the criminal charges, so, there's this tone that maybe there won't be criminal charges brought against Travis Scott directly because, it's just going to be difficult possibly to say, was he directly
Right.
responsible? Did he incite, the crowd to surge the audience? Did he tell them to do that? No, he has previously, and he has been, in 2015, 2017, we've seen him face criminal charges. Will that be the case for Astroworld? Probably not, but that doesn't mean anyone else, any of these other companies that had this responsibility to have the staff in
I'll tell
place.
it would definitely set a precedent, I think, if he was brought up on criminal charges for things like, okay, so we played the footage of him giving his little speech after he saw the ambulance car like that, and he got word he was just going to keep going, and then the first thing he said was, "I want to make this floor shake," or whatever his quote was from that, because he time to turn up. Could that maybe that could be, or when he tells people to rage, what does that mean? His big thing is, I want to see everybody raging out there. I mean, jumping on an ambulance car and shaking it and preventing people from, helping people from, that sounds like raging to me.
So in the realm of, potential liability, separate from any criminal charges, we're talking about civil liability, right? So the individual attendees bringing lawsuits. And now we're seeing, well, as part of LiveNation's refund policy, there may be some fine print that prevents people from
On the back
bringing
of the ticket.
lawsuits. So, essentially, Live Nation's policy is that if you take the refund, right, you take the money, there is mandatory arbitration, which is the fine print that comes with your ticket and the refund. And what that is basically arbitration is like a very fast, cheap version of a lawsuit. And the reason why a lot of these big companies do it is so that they don't have to go through, let's say, a class action lawsuit. They don't
Right.
have to go through the big procedure of lawsuits. And in this case, but up to 50,000 lawsuits potentially. So we're hearing some warnings against people potentially taking refunds because it may bar them from actually bringing a lawsuit.
And that was one of the first things that, Travis Scott, let everybody know that, we're issuing, everybody's going to get a refund at the show, which, I felt at first was like, wow, that's the right thing to do. And then thinking about it more, I'm like, oh, he's trying to limit the bleeding a little bit. I don't know.
So you take it more of a tactical thing rather than being.
Yeah. Instead, whereas for first you could have been cynical because hey, that's just a PR move. Now you see it could be his pocketbook move. So I don't know. Just nothing feels good. Nothing feels good about this. And I guess it's great to offer that. Because I guess not everybody was, severely hurt and stuff like that, but they can still have some kind of, was it resolution for
Trauma. I mean,
trauma
but
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Because they
Yeah,
were
and
expensive tickets. So I mean, it is something, but just definitely be careful and talk to your lawyer if you are planning on, if you have any thought that you might want to bring a lawsuit or join in on this. Definitely don't take that refund until you discuss with your lawyer what you should do.
yeah, and I don't even know if potentially that arbitration language is in your actual ticket, which is potentially the case, right? So, for example, when
Could it
I
be on
went
the
to
website? Could it be on the website? Like when you buy the ticket, do they have to have it printed on the ticket, or could it be when you purchase the ticket? There was even more fine print that you didn't even see that you signed. That you
yeah,
just
in most
quickly
in
click a
most
box and goes, "I've
cases
read everything."
in most cases, when you make an online purchase or you do an online agreement, there will be standard terms and conditions, and that's exactly it. So you go through, and they don't expect you to actually read a 100-page document, but you just click that button that says "I accept."
I've
And
read.
typically, there will be a dispute resolution section, which is in this case arbitration. So it limits the potential liability and headache that Live Nation would need to go through. Now, I don't think that this was a big conspiracy,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Travis
yeah.
Scott with the refund. I think it was, it could have been a PR move or just really, maybe felt bad. But setting that aside, LiveNation doesn't have a responsibility to lift its policy, right?
Right.
Even if it's maybe the right thing to do. So if, for example, there is required arbitration, you can't bring a lawsuit, you can't do a class action, and people already agreed to it or they have to agree to it for a refund, I think a lot of people are going to miss this. And then they're
No,
not going to be able to pursue it.
and it makes sense that it makes sense that Live Nation has this policy in place. You know what I mean? Like it's fine. It just feels funny, especially just more things that just the stuff that you hear going on, the behavior that you hear going on afterwards, the more people that are getting hurt. The age ranges of the victims, like now it's 9 to 27, I believe. So it's just so tragic, and like I'm telling you, this is going to be impacting the way that major festivals and concerts are done, for a long time coming, and people are going to remember this for a long time coming.
Yeah, I have the names and ages of those who have passed. And so Ezra was 9, the youngest, and then we have John who was 14, we have Brianna who is 16, and then they go up to looks like 27. So yeah, I mean, I can't express enough how much my heart goes out to Ezra's family, to those whose lives have been lost, and then the stories that are continuing to come out, and we're getting a more clear picture of what was happening. And this does sound like it was a complete nightmare and something that will be incredibly traumatic for the rest of most people's lives who were literally getting crushed. And we've seen some footage of like these kids who are getting up on stages trying to tell the cameramen, they're like, there's someone lying over there, there's a dead person over there, and
Screaming to stop the show. You have like screaming them literally, you have a radio, call somebody and stop the show. They're pleading with these people.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot more updates that come with this, but we wanted to at least capture what's happened. I think it's been 2 days since our last update. So what we're going to do is we've actually created a playlist, and it has all of the different videos. I go through one of the complaints that were filed, so you guys can see kind of what that looks like, but then also all these new updates that have been happening. So I'll be sure to link that down in the description below if you want to watch our other videos covering this tragedy. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next update. Be sure to subscribe, turn on those bell notifications, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Top Music Attorney, Miss Krystle. Bye.